So Joel, we are actually recording, okay?
Awesome.
And there is no intro.
Okay.
You don't need one.
Okay.
You don't need an intro, Joel. The man, the myth himself. So today we're going to do a deep dive into your training for the Camino walk. Okay.
Yep.
But before we do, I want to read the first correspondence that you sent me 9 months ago. Okay. All right. So here we go. You said we did section hiking on the AT and in Shenandoah National Park last fall. We're doing the Camino Portuguese in September using Max Adventures to help with luggage transfers. We really want to do more section hiking on the AT and really would love to do the Camino Francés, Tour du Mont Blanc, and perhaps the Camino de Costa Rica. I'm terrified of the elevation on beta blockers. My wife and I listened to your podcast after first hearing you on Trails Worth Hiking. Shout out to Jeremy at Trails Worth Hiking. I loved the recent podcast with the 67-year-old you helped. I'm 62 and recently retired physician/executive who wants to get back outside again. I used to do non-technical 14ers, duathlons, and the like. After a great 8K with a personal record in my late 40s, I had a STEMI with the need for a LAD stent and went on beta blockers, and it has been downhill after that with weight gain to 237 from around 180-ish, increased blood pressure, and the development of metabolic syndrome. Since retiring in March of this year, I've lost over 10 pounds. My blood pressure is under control. My sleep is better. And I'm doing essentially mainly zone 2, 45 to 60 minute, 5 days a week. And I bought a Garmin Enduro 3 to keep me honest. By the way, a recent stress echo was fine, and I can elaborate if you'd like. Also, I've had 2 left knee surgeries, the first for patella fracture in my youth, and the second for recurrent pain and lateral release in 2009, with intermittent but not limiting pain subsequent. We are very active in our large garden. My question is whether you have the experience with someone on beta blockers to guide me so I can be successful. I understand medicine, but could use help with a plan. By the way, my wife will be with me for all these trips. We do most everything together. She is a healthy 63. So, Joel, I want to keep you just in this time period, okay?
Sure.
Don't fast forward. Tell me your thoughts on what I just read.
Yeah, I was horrified. I mean, I really wanted to get back out there. And I felt that from a cardiac standpoint, my heart was okay. I saw my cardiologist. I saw my primary care physician, who's a fabulous internist. But I was woefully out of shape. And, I don't hear a lot of people talk about beta blockers and exercise. I know that for me, because my heart rate wouldn't increase that much, I got tired. And, was it because I was just incredibly out of shape because I worked way too many hours, had way too much stress, got no sleep, I was eating poorly, or was it the beta blockers or a combination? So I just, I wanted to do more. And I wanted to reach out to say, hey, I'm willing, help me through this. Again, physicians can be terrible patients because we think we know everything, but we don't. And so I wanted someone that could help me work through how do I get better? How do I exercise knowing these medical problems, especially with the medication I was on? And that's why I reached out.
Well, there was a good first adventure for you. Not a lot of elevation gain. Altitude's not an issue. So that was perfect to kind of for us to get to know each other, for you to kind of initiate some hiking specific training and build some confidence because you have a pretty deep bucket list. Okay, so now you train you train for the walk, okay? and you walk the Camino de Santiago, okay, specifically the Portuguese route. I'm going to tell the audience real quick, just so they understand the Camino de Santiago. It's a legendary network of ancient pilgrimage routes across Europe that all converge at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in northwestern Spain. And rather than a single path, it is a choose-your-own-adventure journey through diverse landscapes ranging from the rugged Pyrenees Mountains on the popular Camino Frances to the scenic Atlantic coastline of the Camino Portuguese, I think is actually how they pronounce it. Whether you walk for a week or a month, the experience is defined by a unique culture of camaraderie, often staying in pilgrim hostels and following the iconic yellow arrows and scallop shells that have guided millions for over 1,000 years. So now you tell me what the Camino Walk means to you and why you chose it as your first adventure.
Yeah, for several things. One, I just think on a just a basic standpoint, it was a really, really good hike that was going to stretch what we could do. It was something that bigger than what I've ever done before. It was going to be a couple of weeks, 13, 20-mile days. We used Max Adventure, so we knew that we weren't going to carry everything on our back. So we're going to do luggage transfer, but still, it was going to be a significant hike. But in addition, I think you referenced this. It's something that's very, very spiritual to a lot of people, whether that's from God or just being in nature day after day after day. And I think that's sort of what we found was, you get up and you walk in the morning, and there were very few people on the trail for the first week. And to the left was the Atlantic Ocean. You could hear the waves coming in and hitting the coast, and overhead you heard birds. And underneath you could hear the crunch of your feet on the sand or the rocks or the boardwalk. It was quiet. It was just a beautiful time just to escape. The world can be just a crazy place, and this was just a beautiful place to be. So, I think both of those things were important. I was surprised by how spiritual it was. But it was a beautiful, beautiful walk.
Yeah, and you mentioned quiet. And so people, so what you mean is quiet, and quiet your mind and your spirit. Yeah, because it wasn't literally quiet because you had the waves, the birds. I feel that way if I go for a hike, particularly in the rain. Love to hike in the rain. It's not literally quiet, but it is, right?
Right.
Cuts the noise. So I get what you're saying.
Quiet in here inside my head. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Did your wife have the same experience?
Yes, very much so.
All right, that's great. Now you've been on you've been on some adventures recently.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to that in 1 second, but so a couple of updates since you wrote that information to me 9 months ago.
Right.
Okay. And you said now you're 63.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, you've lost 50 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
The hard way, and I want to mention, although you say that you don't have any issues with the GLP-1 receptor agonists,
Right.
but it is an interesting contrast because you're choosing to do it the way it's just always been done. Your blood pressure is excellent with daily exercise, weight loss, whole foods, nutrition, adequate sleep, and decreased stress. And you've spent a heck of a lot of money on a new wardrobe.
I did. I was like, I would put coats on and say, "Holy cow, this thing!" I mean, I look like a clown, and as a physician and executive, you would wear suits and sports jackets every day, and I just had to get rid of a bunch of them. So, and I'm not working anymore, so I'm retired. So as I get rid of things, I'm not having to replace everything, but I still have to have sports coats and a suit and a tuxedo for all those things. So anyway, but it's been a nice problem to have.
Yeah, that's great. That's great news. Just really quickly, just tell us, I think since you got back from the Camino, you've done 1 or 2 adventures since then? Just talk to me about what you've
Yeah,
done.
well, we went. We have a daughter that lives in Australia, so we flew over to Australia to see her. And while we were over there, they have a lot of national parks, and we wanted to do another adventure. So we did what's called the Great Ocean Walk. Great Ocean Walk is 100 kilometers, so 60-ish miles, but it's backpacking. It's, not like trekking. There was nobody to carry the luggage, so we carried everything: our tents, our sleeping gear, our food, and we did that for 8 days. That's on the southern part of Australia, right along the Southern Ocean, down near Melbourne and Victoria. So that was an amazing hike, and the days were not as long, but there was a lot more elevation. So some days 2,000 feet plus of elevation, and it was on the coast, but it was up and down because there was significant height along the hike. That was actually incredible. And since we've been back, we're actually getting ready in about 3-4 weeks. We're going to go to England and hike the Cotswold Way, which is a 100-mile hike. It's going to be a trek again using Max Adventure. So we'll hike from, small hotel to another small hotel to another small hotel every day for about 10 days. So that's coming up soon.
You travel a lot, and what's I think unique to the way you travel is you will use all trails wherever you go, and you and your wife, you'll look at trails, and you'll frequently accomplish one or two. When I look back, when we go through the audit, I'm not going to read what you hiked every week, but I did notice that you traveled almost every week, it seemed, and you did hikes.
Yeah.
Which was really a lot of fun. People don't usually have the opportunity to do that during the training. In fact, some people never get to hike at all until they hit the trailhead for the trip that they're training for.
Well, my wife and I talked about this, and we felt that it really added some confidence to get out there and actually do some hikes. Now, many people may not need that, but for us, at least up here in the head, it really made a difference. So, but I would still go to conferences, and so I'd be in Harrisonburg, Virginia, or we'd be driving down 95 to Florida. I've got grandchildren in Florida, and if we happen to drive, we'd look on Altras. Hey, there's a national wildlife refuge, 20 miles up the road, and we pull off and we'd zip over and do a nice hike or something like that. So yes, All Trails is my friend. So we use that all the time.
All right. Shout out to All Trails. So let's dive into the training plan a bit.
Sure.
So my regular listeners will know I often talk about base period and peak period. So you worked with me for 9 full weeks of base, and then you did 12 weeks of peak. In the 9 weeks of base, you did a total of 130 miles and 11,900 feet of elevation gain. And in the peak, you did 212 miles and 19,351 feet. Actually, in 19,351 feet, that's about the height of Kilimanjaro, FYI, which also brings up another interesting fact here, which I will contrast with Kili in a moment. But let's first talk about what you averaged per week in the base. And that was 14.5 miles per week and 1,320 feet as well. Now, in the peak phase, you upped it. You averaged almost 20 miles per week, okay, and 1,741 feet per week as well. Now, quick contrast with Kilimanjaro training plan. Typical Kili plans average maybe 12 miles a week. That's not the limiting factor. That's not the predictor of success. It's the elevation gain. So 12 miles per week maybe for Kili in a peak phase, but 4,500 feet of elevation gain on average per week for Kili. In your case, you averaged 20, which is, 8 miles more a week than what you'd have to do for Kili. And I'm not going to do the math, but like, 2,000 feet less, 3,000. Yes. Yeah, about 3,000 feet less per week. So anyway, that's the difference. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I would just say that it was, when we traveled and if we found a trail, that was great. But I live in Virginia Beach and it's flat. I live 8 miles from the ocean. And so trying to find a place to do elevation was not always easy. Yes, you could do it in the gym. The Stairmaster and treadmill elevation. We actually found there's a park called Mount Trashmore, which is a site of an old trash dump here in Virginia Beach that over the years now is a city park, and it's beautiful. And they have steps going up and then steps coming down. And so we found that we actually got to where we liked doing this a lot. We would just go down there and we'd go up and down and up and down and up and down and try to do that consistently every week, sometimes twice a week if we could. But yeah, that was, I think that, I'm not sure that we mentioned that we have Kili on our list that we want to do in 2027. So we're either going to have to travel and go, we're not too far from the Appalachian Trail. So it's several hours away, but probably we'll just go back to Mount Trashmore and just go up and down the steps a lot.
So your distances, got up to 19 miles on the Camino walk, and you had 1,247 feet of elevation gain. Contrast that with Kili, definitely not 19 miles. Longer itinerary, maybe, I guess 7 or 8 maybe miles. But elevation gain on summit days, 4,500 feet.
Sure.
So anyway, just a different contrast. It's much more about distance on your trip and much less about elevation gain.
Marcus, which is why I'm going to have you as my coach yet again.
Yeah. And it's a different kind of training.
Yeah.
But looks like you're up for learning some new things now that you are retired, my friend. So what I'm going to do is almost go week by week. Okay. And I'm just going to
okay,
call it lightning round in a sense.
Okay.
I'm just going to read some things and then you just tell me kind of what it reminds you of back in your Camino training days.
Yeah.
So the first stuff I'm going to read off to you is just from the base period. I'm not going to go week to week until we get to the peak. So I mentioned here, we'll call it the gyre of training here. So in the base phase, you talked about wearing a 20-pound vest on your walks. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I love rucking. And so, it was good, getting out there and doing a ruck. And it just became easier and easier. Just, I think the first time it was, I tried 10 pounds and said, oh, I can do this. And then 20, which was more than what we needed on the Camino. But yeah, so 20 pounds getting out there and walking through the neighborhood, doing a couple miles or 2.5 miles with a 20-pound ruck. And since then, now I'm doing a 30-pound ruck. So I'm just trying to escalate that. I thought that was really important to try to make sure that I could carry the weight. It was helpful that, over this time I lost 50 pounds. So, that was a lot of weight I was carrying. So now putting on 20 and 30 pounds with the ruck has been really, really good. And I do notice that although my zones are different on the beta blockers, I've noticed that I actually find that if I'm just walking, I tend to stay in zone 1, but if I ruck, I feel like I'm in zone 2 more consistently. So it was actually a very, very good experience getting out there with the ruck.
I just went on Facebook Marketplace and I sold my Rucker 3.0. Not because I don't like rucking, because we had 2 of them.
Yep.
My wife stopped using hers.
Okay.
And so I got $250 for it. That included a 30-pound plate.
Yeah.
That included the rucker and the hip belt. Okay.
Yeah.
$250. Not bad, huh?
Yeah, and so the nice thing is my wife does the same thing. So when we go out there, we do it together. So both of us we're either doing a walk or we're going to the gym at the same time, or we do a ruck at the same time. So we're pretty consistent. When we're our each other's accountability partner.
Yeah, that works really well. You're
Yeah.
lucky. Reviewed lunge progression, and I introduced assisted lunges.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you can recall from that.
I thought they were hard. So, um, lunges are still not my favorite thing, although I'm getting better at them. Um, and yeah, it was good, and I felt that probably more on the Great Ocean Walk in Australia. I felt that doing the lunges really helped me as we were doing more elevation. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, quote unquote.
Yeah. Really necessary. It really is important. Yeah. Okay. In the base phase, you talked a second ago about Mount Trashmore, but this was about 4 weeks into your base, maybe.
Okay.
And you said you did not feel like dying like the first time 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went up Mount Trashmore, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 82 steps. Ah, and I'm just saying, I was completely out of shape. I had a lot of things going wrong. And then it was like, this is actually still hard, but getting easier. And then it was like, yeah, I feel it, but this is good. And I felt like I could do this. And so that was when I felt like, wow, I really am onto something here. Now I just have to be consistent, right? I got to where I could do it. And then it's like, how can I increase this either in frequency or distance with the steps? And then I learned this whole thing about stacking. It's like, okay, so I can do Mount Trashmore and then walk around. They have this big lake that's like 1.6 miles. I can do the steps going up and down and then walk around the lake a couple times or head back to the gym and go to the gym and do something else. So yeah, that was really incredible to know that it's really working, Marcus. I was like, and my wife and I, we would say this, and we said this on the Camino, we said this on the Great Ocean Walk, and we would say it when we were doing Mount Trashmore. I get to the top and say, "Thank you, Marcus."
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up. I didn't want to. I didn't want to pat myself on the back, but yeah, that was that made me feel good. That was
Yeah,
great.
that was
I
good.
remember you sending me that message. Okay, so we're going to keep moving here in base phase. We went over the hip mobility routine,
Uh-huh.
and I'd sent you a link to the incline board and the massage gun. You got an Ekron Bantam percussion massager. I don't know. Thinking back to that, any comments?
I think it was very helpful. I mean, because sometimes the legs would hurt, and it really, really helped. It was probably too heavy to take on the Camino. I really wanted to, but when I weighed my suitcase and knowing what the airlines would let me take, it was a nice to have that I ended up cutting. But here at home, well, I use that quite a bit. And then I think stability was something important. And many people realize that as they get older, their balance is less. And so I was like, wow, okay, doing these things, it's not as easy as I thought it was. And so I really loved the balance work that you put us through. Um, and I thought that was incredibly important. And I've continued to do that and even added to that. And in fact, I don't know if I told you this, but recently I've sort of thrown in and I'm putting toe in the water with doing some yoga and some Tai Chi, as much for balance as for flexibility. But yeah, that's been very helpful. I love the balance work.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
So we're going to now go into the peak phase.
Okay.
And week 1 in the peak phase, you were sick. You went to urgent care. You were on antibiotics. And then in week two, you started feeling better, but then your wife was sick. And it helped that you had already been through a base phase. It would have been a different story and a little discouraging if like we were just getting started.
Right.
In that week 2, it looks like we introduced polling. And any comments on that?
I didn't know how to do polling. So that was incredibly important. It's one of those fundamental skills that I really appreciate looking back that you showed us how to do that. And again, I think on the Camino, there were some days where I did the polling. On the Great Ocean Walk, it really was very, very useful. So, and I think that I found it very useful coming down on the descent. That was really where I found it very helpful, just to make sure that I wasn't falling forward, to make sure that I had the extra balance just in case. And then I would, lengthen the pole a little bit as I was coming down, just because it was a little bit farther. But yeah, that was very important. I think there were some, in addition to the walking, the rucking, the treadmill, the elevation, the steps, the lunges. I think that some of those other fundamental things that you'll probably talk about in a little bit, but polling, nutrition, hydration, those things were very, very important. And I, as a doctor, I really appreciated that you didn't assume that I knew all those things. You taught me, which I found very, very helpful.
Yeah, we will get to that. I have some specific notes about the snacking that we talked about. So not only in week 2 introduced polling, you had mentioned something about intermittent fasting, and at that point you had now lost 25 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
You said your BMI was just barely above 30 at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I was very, very proud of that. I was trying different things. In addition to, cutting down on the total calories, I had to make sure that I had enough energy to do what I was doing, which you were having me to do. And then, the other thing that at my age, I was very concerned about is, I didn't want to cut down on the calories too much, and doing that decrease my protein and then develop what we call sarcopenia, sort of not having enough musculature as you get older. So, how do I do that? Making sure that I had enough calories, but also doing intermittent fasting, because with the metabolic syndrome, that was good from an insulin resistance standpoint. But then trying to make up for it, later in the day, but also making sure I had enough carb in me for energy balance to do the work that you were having me do. So, during this time, I said, you know what? I don't have diabetes, but I'm going to get a CGM. So I got a continuous glucose monitor and plopped it on. And that really, really helped as well. I don't think that's absolutely necessary, but for me, since I was trying to balance different things, it was pretty beneficial.
Okay. And segueing into week 3, you had ordered various fuels from the list
Mm-hmm.
of snacks
Mm-hmm.
that we talked about. Can you
Yeah.
remember what you got, and then ultimately what you end up
Yeah.
enjoying?
I like to scratch. They, they actually
The
tasted
scratch
pretty good.
chews.
Yeah. Those were really nice. So, and so, yeah, we would use those. The waffles were nice as well. But the scratch was probably my favorite. Some of them, I didn't like as much. But the scratch sort of rose to the top. So,
All right, and also in week 3, on a different tangent, you reviewed your camera and gear list for the Camino. I don't know, it's a different tangent. Is there anything that stands out about camera gear you want to share, or moving on?
it added weight. So, I think that I love a beautiful Nikon camera, as does my wife Susan. But I've got a pretty nice iPhone, and it takes pretty nice pictures, and GoPro does pretty well. So I think that when we went to Australia, we just left the mirrorless cameras at home and just use our phones and GoPros. So
Week 3, also, you increased your treadmill elevation to 8%.
hmm hmm yeah, that was good. I was I felt that the treadmill was probably my most enjoyable cardio thing in the gym. I like being outside more, but in the gym when it was cold or raining. And so, adding that elevation with the treadmill, was important, and trying to increase a little bit more. Um, I was nervous, about doing, too much high intensity training. So, I would push into zone 3 consistently and sometimes into zone 4. And I found that the elevation helped me to get there, but I didn't want to get higher than that again because I had that heart attack in my 40s. And even though my stress echo was okay, I was just a little bit nervous about doing too much that. But the elevation on the treadmill, I think, was helpful in getting me into a higher zone level.
Yeah, and you revealed a lot in week 3. You talked about you and Susan doing meditation every morning to set the tone for the day, and we'll continue on the Camino.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did on the Camino. It was a lot of fun. We would get up and we'd either do an elevation before we left, or if we didn't do it before we left, we would stop maybe an hour or two in if there was some beautiful area, and we'd sit down and listen to the ocean and do a meditation. And I found that the meditation, probably from a holistic standpoint, was very good for um, just sort of helping decrease the stress, which decreased my cortisol levels, which was good, from an inflammation standpoint, good from a blood pressure standpoint. And then I felt like I was dialed in from a mindfulness standpoint. It sort of helped clear my brain, so I could focus on what was right ahead of me, which was beautiful in this walk. Just being focused in on that. And then, before we went, of course, I think that it was very good because it said, okay, I'm here now. I'm dialing into the treadmill, and I found that I would be very mindful on the treadmill as well, trying to just think about my breathing, steps, I'm here, and time would go by pretty quickly on the treadmill. So it was a good thing to incorporate the mindfulness meditation into everything else from a holistic standpoint.
Is there a certain methodology that you use?
I will often do a guided meditation, with an app. I've grown pretty fond of a thing called box breathing, which is, I breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and do that cycle for 5 or 10 minutes. I know that, from, the nervous system, it increases your parasympathetic activity. So that helps sort of de-stress you. So I love box breathing. I love a guided meditation. And then if I don't have guided, I'll just try to pay attention to my breath. But like many people that meditate, you're breathing in and out. The next thing you know, you're thinking about something completely different. You're like, oh, where am I? And you just bring it back.
Yeah, so does that influence your HRV? You mentioned that you use the Garmin and you said it tells me my HRV is unstable and to rest for recovery. And that was, I think, on a Sunday of week
Mhm.
3. So does
Yeah.
that tell me just about how you leverage the HRV and how the meditation helps that,
Yeah.
if at all?
I think that, and there's a lot of ways to look at recovery. And that's one way. I mean, just thinking about what your body's telling you is important. But I look at the HRV, and if the HRV was not improving or not staying the same, or heavens, if it was decreasing significantly, that told me that my sympathetic nervous system was still too high and I haven't recovered nicely yet. So I would look at that as a guide to, okay, how aggressive can I be today? Now, since that, I've actually gotten the Morpheus that I use every morning. And I find that, the way they calculate HRV is different. And I still look at both. I look at the Garmin, which does overnight. The Morpheus does that snapshot first thing in the morning before I get out of bed. And I'll use both of them to try to guide me. But I found that actually now that I'm attuned closer with my body, I actually sort of know, hey, I can be pretty aggressive today. I feel pretty good. Or I'm not really feeling it today. Maybe I need to dial it down. And usually how I feel correlates nicely with my HRV, whether it be Garmin or Morpheus.
Yeah, for those folks listening, look up Morpheus. Morpheus is you do the heart rate strap. You do it typically in the morning,
Mhm.
whereas I think Garmin you just wear it all day long. It is a different algorithm. Yeah. I like Morpheus. I have one,
Mhm.
and I don't use it because I do not listen. I do not. I do not do what it tells me to do.
Sure.
So whenever you have data, you can look at data all day long. You know this is a doctor. If you're not going to respond to it, you're literally wasting your mind, your brain power. So I'm a huge Morpheus fan, but I guess right now I'll break and tell everybody that building the HikeStrong app,
Uh-huh.
and while building the HikeStrong app, it is a full-time job. Anyone that tells you a startup is not,
Right.
it is. And so my HRV is not very good right now. Okay. So everybody go to hikestrongapp.com, okay? And hopefully we'll launch that in the spring.
Yeah, I've signed up. I'm waiting.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Yeah, I'm definitely an HRV fan. Okay, here's a little quiz here from your diary.
Okay.
Do you remember who died in week 3 of your training plan?
Oh, I've actually had a bunch of people that I know who've passed away.
Well, I'm sorry, this is not a way to break. It's it's actually not the coolest thing to bring up, but there is a reason. It was Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh,
So
Ozzy.
yeah,
Yeah, I've actually had a number of friends who've died in the last 6, 9 months. So I was thinking, was that then? Yeah, Ozzy. Yeah.
I don't want to overlook your friends. I know that sounded a little
Oh, I
awkward,
love me some
but
Ozzy.
yes, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out just for a little context.
Listening to Black Sabbath and thinking, wow, War Pigs and Paranoia and what, great music back then.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I actually,
yeah.
I went to, there is a ballet company from Birmingham, UK that actually put together a ballet based on the Black Sabbath music. It didn't have the later Ozzy stuff, but the early Black Sabbath stuff. So I went to that. It wasn't long after he had passed away, and it was incredible to listen to that music with ballet. There was a dissonance in my head. I was like, wait a minute, this is Black Sabbath, and I'm watching a ballet. But it was really amazing the way that they blended both of those art forms together. Actually, in addition to having a symphony, they had a local rock and roll band that was sort of emphasizing the music and adding to. So it was incredible.
Yeah, when I was it could have been elementary school. Yeah, it was in elementary school. In elementary school, I was a Black Sabbath fan.
Yeah.
And I was over at Robert Garcia's house upstairs in his room, and he had a record player, as
Yeah.
we did back
How
then.
quaint.
And
They're coming back.
we spun it. Yes, they are. We spun it backwards,
Oh, you did. Okay.
and it was really scary. When you're in elementary school and
Mm-hmm.
you hear voices play backwards,
Mm-hmm.
particularly on a Black Sabbath album,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you think the devil is coming to take you away. That is true. All right,
Yeah.
and then in in week 4, you wore Injinji toe socks for the first time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That was pretty cool. I was nervous as well. I watched a lot of YouTube videos about people walking on the Camino, people like me who didn't do that kind of walking, and they would, pull out their socks and show these incredible blisters, and I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want blisters. So, we talked about, hey, let's talk about socks. That was one of those foundational things that I wasn't sure what to do, and yeah, the toe socks worked well. And at the end of the day, I use Altra shoes, trail runners, and the Injinji toe socks. And then on top of that, I put Darn Tough socks. So I double socked And then I had the Ultra trail runners, which I love them because they have a wide toe box. So it just felt good. And my wife did the same thing, and no blisters at all. No hot spots. Fantastic.
All right, week 5. You said you'd worked all day in the garden. You got 22,000 total steps.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty cool. From that week, look, hiking after hiking after hiking. You're traveling again. It's unbelievable. So let's skip to week. Oh, okay.
Let me just say something about that.
Yeah.
I love formal, formal exercise, but I've along this journey is like, okay, there's a lot of other things that I do that maybe I can increase that. So gardening is one of those things. And so, making sure that from a gardening standpoint, when I'm out there, I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing things, I'm actually exercising. It's not formal. I'm not measuring. I measure on the garment. It just measures for me the number of steps. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we do that actually we can count as, we're burning calories, we're increasing our metabolism, even if I don't increase my zone. Anyway, that for us, we're huge gardeners. We have a huge vegetable and flower garden, so we spend a lot of time there. But so even if I didn't count the miles, we were doing lots of steps. And then bending over, I was thinking about you when we were bending over. I said, okay, he would be proud of me. And then I was like, I'd get down and I would lunge back up. So I said, all right, Marcus.
Yeah. Absolutely. You were doing that lunge down into the half kneel position. Very nice. Also, week 5, you got 12 miles. I think that was your longest at the time, I believe. And then in week 6, you talked about the Trashmore steps again. And for the first time, you mentioned you doing these postprandial bike rides. And I think you've done some walks. Just tell the listeners about the importance of that.
So there's so for people who have insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome, and mine, thank goodness, is in my rearview mirror now, but I have to be ever vigilant. Or people who have diabetes, there is a literature that shows that if you do some exercise after you eat, especially if it's a larger carb meal, that by doing that, and it doesn't have to be long, maybe 10 minutes, that you actually can drive some of that glucose into your larger leg muscles. And if you wear a glucose monitor, a CGM, you actually can see that happening. So we got in the habit, hey, okay, we had dinner. Let's just go for a walk around the neighborhood, 10 minutes. And it was very, very helpful. I think you could see that the glucose monitors show that it would decrease down your interstitial glucose level. So anyway, we started doing that, and we continue to do that even now. Even though I'm not wearing a CGM right now, it's a good habit, and it does take long.
Okay, moving into week 7, you got a milestone challenge of 15 miles. That was great. You talked about carb snacks taken each hour without a glucose spike. You were doing the half bags of the Scratch energy chews.
Yeah, that was the one thing too. Is trying to balance a lot of balls in the air. I knew that I needed the energy, and that we were very clear about needing the energy. I also wanted to make sure that I didn't have a pretty significant glucose spike. So I found that I could do pretty good with half of a bag of Scratch or half of a waffle. I think that now I could probably do more than that, probably because I'm burning more energy and my insulin resistance is much, much better. But at the time, that's sort of where I landed.
Okay. And in week 8, you broke the 200-pound threshold, 199.6 pounds.
Whoa.
And that week it was your birthday, because you said, Susan says, what do you want to do for your birthday? And you said, let's go for a hike.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, it's I don't, Marcus, have you read The Comfort Crisis?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. I mean, as I thought about that, it's like, okay, I'm going to, instead of on my birthday, sort of chilling out and drinking an extra bottle of wine and, then watching a movie or Netflix or something like that, let's go do something that's vigorous. That's a little bit harder. So yeah, it's been a good change in mindset.
Yeah, your lifestyle is just
Yeah.
it's really admirable at this point. All through this plan, and it sounds like it still continues to be. So in week 9, you're now up to 9% incline,
Hmm.
and it looks like 99,663 total steps. That was interesting. And then in week 10, you're now up to 10% of incline.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, yeah, that was for the week, 99,000, it looks like. Yeah, because then week 10, you were 82,454 steps this week. Okay. All great. So now we're kind of taper week and you're hitting the Camino now. So
Yeah.
just reflect back to everything I just talked about. Then I have a few more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. I think, Marcus, that one of the most important things for me, having you as a coach, in addition to the fundamentals, was I had an accountability partner. And so I knew that you and I were going to talk, and I knew that you were going to look at what I was doing. And, there's a whole science behind change management. And I think that having you as an accountability partner made it so that I changed my habits. I then got into new habits. So then over time, I probably didn't need you for that accountability piece because I already changed my habits. But it was really important for me in the beginning. I'm like a lot of people. I don't want to fail. I want to do good work. And especially if I'm putting money down, I wanted to make sure I was getting benefit from that. But then, yeah, my habits changed. And so then the nice thing is here we are, quite a few months later, I still do all the same things that I did before. I still do my balance workout. I still do lunges. I still do rucks. I still go up and down the steps. I've probably added in some resistance training, which I wasn't doing as much then. Um, but yeah, I think it was fantastic to get me through to new habits. Um, and you talked about the number of steps. I was looking back at some of the days on the Camino were 55,000 steps. So, had Susan and I gone without the training, I know that we would have done it, but it would have been really, really, really hard and miserable. And we started this, and you said, tell me about the Camino, and I said, yeah, it was something that was hard. Um, but it was also something that was spiritual. And I'm not sure I would have gotten that second piece had it been incredibly hard. I just went to visit my brother, who's an engineer for NASA, and we were watching this video, and it was of JFK. He said, "Why do we choose to go to the moon? We choose to go to the moon not because it's easy. We choose to go to the moon because it is hard." And when I heard JFK say that, I said, that's sort of been this journey with you, Marcus. It's been hard, but it's been good, and the results, I think, show for themselves. So now, now I have this confidence that by working your system, I've built a confidence up. I've seen results, and I've been able to do things that I didn't think I could do before. So now I'm like, okay, what else can I do? So I was listening to your podcast the other day. You've had several people that did Kili. I said, wow, maybe I can do that. So yeah, so I think the confidence has been very, very important for me.
That would normally be an amazing place to stop,
Mm.
but you're not in luck. Sorry. 3 more questions. That was the
Okay.
perfect place. If that was like a script, that would be the place to stop. But there's just a few more things.
Sure.
Any tip? So let's first, looking back at exercise, just one or two things that you want to share with the listeners that you're like, you know what, this is critical for my hiking level and lifestyle. Do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You know,
So I'll say two things. One is I think that steps and more steps. That was very important. I mean, all of it was important. Don't get me wrong. All of it's important. But for me, doing the steps was very, very helpful for me. Um, Maybe less for the Camino, but more for the Great Ocean Walk. And when we do the Tour du Mont Blanc, I think it'll be incredibly important there. I also would say that at age 63 now, understanding about balance, the other important thing that I did with you that I think is maybe not as important for the people that are 30 or 40, but the people that are 50, 60, 70, or 80 is balance and lunges and making sure that I can control my body if I'm on an uneven surface or if I have a misstep or something of that sort. But those were the two big things that I found to be incredibly beneficial for me.
when you say steps, literally steps or step ups or
Well, yes,
stairs?
like steps up Mount Trashmore, the step ups. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. Now let's segue to tips for the listeners about the Camino walk.
Yeah.
One, two, or three tips. If they're going to go, what do you recommend?
Yeah. So I think that if you're young, the experience for the Camino may be staying in a hostel. We decided not to do that. We decided to hire a company that put us up every night. So the nice thing about that was, in the morning, I knew where I was going to stay that night and I knew how far it was going to be. And I could just focus on getting there. But that costs money. So I think that for me, it was important. I think for other people, staying in a hostel is part of the experience of the Camino. Um, that wasn't what we chose to do. And I think that the other thing on the Camino is depending on where you do it. If you do the Camino Frances, you have to come over the Pyrenees. So understanding what it's going to be to go over the Pyrenees and the elevation there. For us, it was along the coast. The one part that was probably harder than anything, if you're doing the coastal, especially if you're doing the literal part of the coastal, is walking over sand dunes and along the beach. That's a different kind of walking than walking on a boardwalk. But I would say that you know making understanding that I can walk through sand, I can walk on a boardwalk, I can walk over rocks, over gravel, over hard pack. The Camino, every kind of walking was there that was imaginable. And the other thing about the Camino is there's a lot of beautiful people along the way, both other pilgrims and the people that were there were so happy that we were there doing this walk, experiencing the country. Um, and the food was incredible. I ate so much cod. It was the faithful friend. And every time we went to a new place, it was more cod, different recipes. So yeah, it was just a beautiful, beautiful part of Portugal and Spain.
Okay. All right. So the last thing, let's talk about a musical journey. Okay. What is a musical journey? I've talked about it a few times in some other podcasts. So basically what that is going on a hike, particularly training hikes. Let's say you're in a base or a peak phase
Mm-hmm.
and you're training for a summit or the Camino or whatever. So what you do is you pick an artist, let's say Led Zeppelin for the heck of it, and you start at the first song, first album, and you go from one song to the next, go all the way through like we did back in the day with the records or the cassette tapes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Not like you can listen to music now. And what you find is you get a different kind of context for the songs that you've maybe heard on the radio but never heard the song before it or heard the song after it, or see the contrast between their first record and their second record. It's really a lot of fun. So the reason why, and then what you do is when you're done with that training hike, remember where you left off. And then when you go back on the next weekend or so, just start in that same place until you go through every single album they've ever recorded and listen to the evolution. It's really a ton of fun. And I bring that up because you and I talked about 3 artists in the time. We talked about Ozzy Osbourne. So people go do a musical journey for Ozzy Osbourne. But also I introduced you to Matteo Mancuso. I know, that's just insane.
Oh my God.
Guess what? Guess who's seeing Matteo Mancuso next week?
This
guy.
Oh.
Right here. This guy. I'm so excited.
He's this insane guitarist. Oh my gosh. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, Matteo, you'd find a lot of stuff on YouTube. I don't think he has many albums now. Does a lot of live performance stuff, which you find on YouTube. But also, you had gone to see, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Jacob Collier?
Collier. Yeah.
Collier.
Collier. Yes.
Got also another dude on YouTube to look up. What an entertainer.
He's such an incredible jazz genius, just up in his head. He plays every instrument. He plays them all well. I'm so jealous.
I know. It's like a blessing and a curse, right? It's like we love music so much, but we can't play like those people. But anyway, it's fun. You know what, my friend? I think that's a good place to end. So look, Joel, I'm so grateful that you gave me the opportunity to work with you. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the rapport that we built over that time. And I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with the listener. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you. I wanted to do more. I didn't know how to do it. I wasn't sure how to go down this pathway, and you helped. I'm very, very thankful for that. And for the journey that I'm on now, it's been incredible. And I can't wait to share with you when we get back from England and the Cotswolds. And then we're going to go to Switzerland and do the Bernese Oberland and do a bunch of day hikes around the Eiger. And then I'll be back for Killy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. What a journey. Well, my friend, it is time to depart. Train, hike, repeat.
Yes.
How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Train, hike, repeat. Okay, let's stay in touch. All right, Joel?
Sounds good.
Okay, my
Thank
friend.
You
take care. Bye-bye. That concludes this episode of the HikeStrong podcast. I'm committed to keeping all of the episodes for free. All I ask is that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. My goal is to build a vast community of hikers with the confidence to crush any local or global trail. I hope you will join me in this endeavor. So until next time, train, hike, repeat, and as always, I'm here to support you every step of the way.
Thank you. You made it easy peasy. Look, I had all my notes and everything. I had to go back and looked at things. So I said, okay. And I think I got what I wanted to say in too. And I hope, I listened to you and Jeremy and Paddle Blue and a bunch of other podcasts. I hope that what people get out of it, which is why I was okay with you sharing about my health history, is hope people say, yeah, I'm not like that, 30-year-old that, conquers the world. I'm more like that Joel guy. I've had whatever. And that, you know what? You still have to follow your physician's advice. And, I would go talk to them, and I talk to you and talk to them. But hopefully someone will say, yeah, that's pretty good. That's me. And I can do it too. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted, Joel. That's why I was happy you let me read that stuff, because I wanted some people to relate.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people out there that could relate and be like, if Joel could do it, I could do it. And had we not gone through that, it's fine. I mean, it was your privacy, but it really made a difference that we were able to talk about it.
I'll do the math and I'll come back. I want to hire you again before we do the Bernese Oberland. That's going to be a lot more elevation than what I even did in Australia. And And I think I wrote this in the email. Complete things. We're going to spend 8 or 9 days in Switzerland hiking around the Eiger, and then we're going to spend 8 days bicycling in the Loire Valley. So I have to do bicycling as well. I can't let that go.
Yeah,
So,
right.
that's what I'm going to need your help with. It's how to balance without. I don't want to exercise all day, every day, but
Yeah, right. Absolutely.